Welcome to part 2 of the NVivo workshop for archival research. This part will go over how to create and organize archival data within NVivo using file classifications, attributes, and cases. Then we'll also go over how to code various types of archival data, everything from photographs and PDFs to audio and video recordings. So the first tool we're going to look at that can help organize archival data is file classifications. So I'm going to go ahead and open up NVivo. And we're already on our sample project. If we go to the left-hand side of the blue navigation panel, you'll see file classifications as an option. Go ahead and select that. And you'll see that the sample project has already been organized into the file classifications of general images, GIS images, interviews, and references. And if we expand these categories, we can even see sub-attributes listed under them. For interview, for example, we have the interviewer as an attribute, the date, and the time. So each of these will also have other attributes that the researcher has added. So this can be helpful for, you can use any characteristics to create data classifications that make sense for your project's data. So for example, if you are collecting a lot of historical newspaper articles from an archive, you may want to make newspaper articles a file classification so you can have them all easily accessible in one particular folder. And that would go for any type of archival data that you may be collecting for your project, that it would make sense to put it in its own folder just to keep it organized. So that can be, like I said, newspaper articles, it could be photographs, it could be excerpts from yearbooks, etc. So I'm going to show you how to make a new file classification. Since this can be very tailored to your project, you would just go to file classifications over here on the left-hand side. You would right-click it, and then you would just hit New Classification. So just as an example, I am going to add newspaper articles as a file classification. And you can add a description if you want to, but it's not required. And you could also select any options down here that you would want. So you can see you have some predefined classifications that could work, whether it's ancient text, aggregated from a database, artwork, audiovisual material, bill, blog. There's plenty of other predefined classifications, but again, if you want to make your own because it makes more sense for your project, and it's not listed here, you can just add in whatever name you would like here, and then just select OK. And then newspaper articles will be added, and you can just drag and drop any of your files into newspaper articles. So for example, if I wanted to add this document, I would just right-click it, scroll down to the classification on the menu that pops up, and then under file classification, it has no classification right now, but I can scroll down and select newspaper articles, and then it would be put into once it loads, it should be put into the newspaper article file classification. Here it is. And to open it, I would just hit open file. So that can organize it, organize all your archival materials by file classifications, can just help you keep track of everything and just manage your data so much better. So next I wanted to show you how to create an attribute of a file classification. As I showed you before, under each of these file classifications, they have more specific attributes beneath them. So for interview, there's the interviewer, the date, and the time. And for the references, you can see the author, year, title, publisher, etc. as attributes. For that, the researcher have also given attributes for images by township, date taken, date accessed, and other attributes as well for the GIS images. So for newspaper articles, we're just going to add an attribute under our file classification. The process is very similar to adding a file classification. Um, Instead of right-clicking on file classification to add an attribute, you would right-click on the specific classification. So we're going to right-click on newspaper articles and then hit new attribute. And we're just going to put publication date as an attribute. And we'll make it a date instead of text. That'll be a date as the value, and then hit OK. So now under newspaper articles, we have publication date. And this is important because this will allow you to export and visualize data for specific attributes. So for example, if we go under the interview tab and we select interviewer and right click, you can hit visualize and chart files by attribute value. And then it should pull up this chart that shows the number of interviews for each interviewer. And if you'd like, you can go to select data at the top and select any data you would like based on the attributes and the number of matching items. So that just gives you an example of how you can use attributes to visualize data for example specific interviewers, or in other examples for dates or any other attributes you may want to create. All you have to do is right click on that attribute and you will have these options from the drop down menu. You just see the example from below from that we just did. And that can be pretty helpful for not only organizing your data, but then visualizing it to help you with your analysis. So that is attributes. And next we are going to go to cases. Okay, so now cases are the people, places, organizations, events, or any other entities that constitute a unit analysis in a project. So cases are down here on the farther down the navigation panel on the left. You'll see cases. And if you hit the expand button, you'll see that people and places are already cases for this project. I've added time period, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. But I'm going to go ahead and click places. So cases are the units of analysis, are the entities that you want to analyze and compare in your project and in your research. So while file classifications describe the source of the data file, such as newspapers or interviews, etc., cases are more descriptive information about the content of your data. So cases are like containers that hold all the information related to a person, a place, or any other unit of analysis that you're studying. So for example, um, if we select cases and look at the sample project cases, we can expand Carrot County and we can select Buford. And if we double click it, we can open the case to see all of the information that has been coded for that location. So we can review everything about Buford by selecting um, by opening the case file. So this is everything that was coded for this location and all of the references to this location. And so that's really helpful to organize your data by whatever unit of analysis that you want to study, whether that's a person, a place, a time period, a specific archive that you're looking at, anything that makes sense for your project. So I'm going to show you how to add cases. You would just go to cases here, right click it and hit new case. And you can do time period. And then you would just hit OK. And it should add it to the left-hand side. So it added it to the middle um, under the auto-coded cases, which is fine. If you would like it to be over on the side so that you don't have to, you can easily expand it and it'll always be there. It just makes it easier if you're highlighting things to drag and drop into cases. You can drag and drop easier and you can select them easier. You can right click and do new folder, and that'll give you a folder for your case, for that particular case, and it will be put under here. So if we hit new folder and do time periods, I'm just going to do an example so you can see. You can also add a description if you'd like, hit OK. Then it will pop up over on the left-hand side. I'm going to go ahead and delete it just because I don't need it repeated. Just hit OK. And then it's gone. So yeah, depending on your project and where you would like it, you can either put cases underneath the case tab and it'll show up in the middle, or you can add a new folder and put it over here. So now if we select time period over here, you'll see that I've already added 1700s, 1800s, and 1900s just as an example. If you want to add more, you can always just hit new case, or you can just drag and drop to drag any selection to code to an existing case. You drag it in to the existing case that you want to code it to, or you drag it beneath in the blank space to create a new case if you would like. So I have coded a few things that I found referencing these millennia, and it makes it, if there are separate folders under here, it makes it much easier to use different queries, because since they're their own folders in the queries tab, you can, for example, if we go to explore and do a word frequency query and give it some time to pull up, you'll see that selected folders is an option to run a query. So if the cases are their own folders, you can basically do queries within a specific reference to a person, places, or time periods, or any other case classification that would make sense for your project. And then you can run these queries within that smaller scope. So you can run what the most frequently used words were about a particular person, place, or time period, or any other unit of analysis that makes sense for your project. So now we're going to move on to now that we've talked about how to organize the data, we're going to go on to how you can use NVivo to code various types of archival data. There's many different types of data gathered from archives, such as photos and PDFs, oral history recordings, that would normally be difficult to code and like put together. Luckily, NVivo allows users to code these files using a few different methods that can integrate everything together. So for coding photographs, for example, let's go to our files and file classifications, and we can pull up images. And if we double click, we can pull up all the images that are here. And let's see, let's go to this barrier islands, select that and then right click and open file. And it should be a photo, I believe. Yeah. So here's a photo of a lighthouse. So if we want to just code that lighthouse, you can code photographs just by making a rectangle selection box. So if we click and drag, a little selection rectangle will appear. So I'm going to select that lighthouse and I'm going to go to my codes and I'm going to say this counts as infrastructure. So in the same way that you can highlight text and drag and drop it, you can also use this to drag and drop parts of photos. So I'm going to drag that into infrastructure and it is coded, as you can see. I'm also going to code it as human development since I'm assuming humans built that. You can, if a lot of people reference the lighthouse, giving them some kind of sense of community, um, you can also code it there. Or local connection, local identity, anything you would like. So yeah, I've coded it in 3 different places now. And then of course you can also code any notes you have on the lighthouse as well. So if you want to highlight this and drag and drop it, that's possible too. But yeah, so that's one way. You can code multiple different parts. So say I want to code the shoreline for some reason. I can code that and put it into natural environment. And there we go. So I've coded 2 parts of the picture. If you want to code the entire picture under a specific code, you would just select the whole thing and drag and drop it the same way. And archives often have a lot of photo data, so this tool is very helpful for coding not only the whole image, but specific parts of the image into different codes and just allowing you to integrate like more text data with your photograph data. So that's how you would do photographs. Now I'm going to go over coding PDFs. So I'm going to close out this and this. And let's see if we can find Under file classifications, see if we can find a PDF. Okay, so let's see, how about pulling open references? Open classification sheet. And I believe this one is a PDF. So we're going to go ahead and open this file. Great. So we have a PDF, and this one is a text searchable PDF. It's a PDF that's been created by a computer, meaning the text is highlightable and searchable, which is great because then coding it is the same as coding any other text data. You just highlight the text that you're interested in coding and drag it and drop it into your codes, just like any other text data. If the PDF has photographs in it as well, you can highlight the caption of it normally, and then you would have to highlight the entire thing, unfortunately. Or you can just highlight the caption. But unfortunately, if there is also a picture in the readable PDF, it is a little bit harder to code it because you'll have to keep switching back and forth between highlighting text and then highlighting regions. You can't just highlight the region and the text, unfortunately, but you can go up to the top, and instead of having text selected, you select region, and then you can do the same thing that was done before the photographs and highlight the picture or part of the picture, depending on what you want to code. And then once you've done that and gotten your selection, you can drag it and drop it into a code. However, if you do any text with this tool, like say I want to do the caption and the photo together, it's going to treat it as a picture. So this text will not be searchable. So if you are doing like a word frequency query or anything like that, it will not read the text as words. It will just count it as a photo. So if you want anything to show up in any queries using any kind of word text search and stuff like that, you will have to highlight the text using the text tool, and then any photos you'll have to select with the region selection tool. So you'll have to switch back and forth between for documents or PDFs that have both text and photographs. Now we're going to try and find an image-based or a scanned PDF. These are PDFs that were not created by a computer. They were basically created scanning a page of a book or something like that. So they're a little bit different, but not much. We're going to close out of here and close out of our references. And I'm going to close out of this as well. And I'm going to go back to file classifications. And this time I'm going to pull up GIS images, open classifications sheet, and do a property subdivision in Marshallburg. I'm just going to open that file, make sure you select it, and then right click and open file. And there we go. We have some text that is not highlightable. It does not have the text option to highlight it, but it does have the selection tool. So this entire thing is a scanned PDF. NVivo is going to read it as a photograph, basically. It does not have any readable text, but you are able to add notes over here, and you can highlight that and drag it and drop it. So you can highlight any of the notes that you put under the content, and you can drag and drop that into any codes that are relevant, or make new codes, whatever is best for your project. And then for the photograph part, you can just do the same thing that we did before with creating the rectangular selection and then dragging and dropping it into the codes. That way, again, it's going to read it as a photograph, not text. So just keep that in mind. If there's anything that you want read as text, you'll have to put it in the note section. But yeah, you can highlight you can select the text separately from the map, or do it all together, whichever makes sense for your coding. So that's just an example. It's pretty helpful for any archival data that has both images and text, or anything that has to be scanned from an archive where you are not able to get an electronic copy of it, or you cannot create an electronic readable PDF from a scanned copy. This is a pretty helpful tool to kind of help just organize and code and integrate all different types of data from the archives. And now lastly, we're going to go over features that can help code audio and video recordings. You may need to code audio or video files if your research includes any interviews or oral histories or historical speeches and radio clips, or any other type of recordings that may be helpful for archival research. So to give an example of this, I'm going to go ahead and close out of this, and I'm going to go to back to file classifications and pull open interviews. And let's go ahead and open Betty and Paul's interview. There we go. So NVivo allows you to transcribe directly inside the software. Alternatively, you can also upload or copy and paste a transcript that has already been completed. But if you're going to transcribe in NVivo, to add or edit the transcription, you would just select the edit option on the right-hand side of the ribbon at the top of the screen. So if we go here, and you would just hit the arrow to get to the right-hand side, you would just hit edit, and then this will allow you to edit the transcription. As you can see, I am editing it. It also allows you to easily play, pause, start selection, finish selection, stop, loop, um, insert rows, import rows. That's where you can put like the timestamps. So if you've, for example, put the first 13 seconds on a timestamp, it'll allow you to loop just this part until you have finished transcribing the content. So it's a pretty helpful transcription tool. It makes it a lot easier. But you can also just upload your own transcription if you've already done it by yourself, or use some other transcription software. That's fine too. It just gives you the option. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to turn on the coding strips, which are right here. all, and that'll allow you to look at the coding, both the coding strips in the timestamps and from where the video is playing. You can see what time sections are coded the most, which time periods, and then you can also see it within the transcription as well. That's what this one is right here. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out, hit none, so that the coding strips go away. Also going to close out edit just since we're not editing right now. Um, and for coding this, it's the same as coding any type of text. You would just highlight it and drag it and drop it into whichever codes you feel it's relevant for. Highlight and then drag and drop. You can also do annotations if you'd like. If there's context you need to give to remind yourself for what they were saying, if it's connected to something else that you want to remember for later, you can highlight it and then hit new annotation. And then you would just hit, just type in whatever your annotation is. I'm just going to put test annotation. And then it's in there. Um, there's also options to just do queries on the video. You can explore all those options at the top. Again, it gives you more controls up here. There's auto coding, range coding, word cloud. You can make a word cloud of the most used words in the interview. These are good for like small scale um, analysis of a single interview, uh, just to give you maybe ideas of what kind of codes might be helpful for the interview or anything like that. Again, it's pretty helpful if you're doing like a archival project with a lot of audio and visual components, um, such as oral histories or historical speeches or recordings, um, movies, even film, anything like that. It's pretty helpful tools to help you annotate, transcribe, look at your coding both through timestamps and in your transcription. It just gives a lot of different options. And again, once it's coded, it will be integrated all together regardless of how many different file types you are using. All right, so that is it for audio and visual coding. And the next part will be part 3, where we will go over analyzing some tools to analyze data, integrating all these components together. How then can we do some analysis?